Hello and welcome to the Blue Shadow Podcast. My name is Joey,
My name is Dan.
and today we are excited question mark to bring you episode it's kind of episode 2, but the first true episode of our Andor season 1 rewatch show. The reason we're doing this is because I, Joey, am not the biggest fan of Andor. I thought it was very well made, very high quality, just not so much for me. If you want to hear about our background and thoughts going in, we released an episode on that. So feel free to listen to that so we don't, you know, double dip on what we're talking about. But Dan, just quickly, how do you feel about Andor?
From the beginning or after this the first arc
Beginning.
rewatch?
We'll get to the rewatch
Oh,
after.
I really liked it. It's my type of show.
And I think that kind of sets us up for an interesting conversation. Again, we released a previous episode. Please feel free to go listen to that and then come back here. But I kind of want to start off with just saying, like, after rewatching it, we'll get into the details, talk about the characters, talk about some of the story beats and stuff. But just first impressions on the rewatch. What did you think? How did it track with your memory of watching it and what you thought before?
Uh, the second rewatch for me, it went a little faster. I guess I because I knew what the build up was,
Hmm.
and for example, like I knew the Canary backstory already, which helps.
Did you find that it changed? Like, did you like it any more, any less? Did anything change?
Uh, it reaffirmed my feelings for some characters.
Okay. We can get
Tim,
into I want to talk about Tim. I think let me share my initial thought. I
go
will
ahead.
say so I felt like the first two episodes, and I remember feeling this way the first time I watched it, were a little bit of a slog for me. I was like, I really was hoping that this would my impression would kind of change. But something about when I put that third episode on, it kind of clicked. I don't know if it was Luthen. I don't think it was necessarily that it was action, but I think it was like that things started to really happen. You started to
Right.
like
This
what was being built started to like really take shape.
The first two episodes were a slow burn,
And
giving
that
you
they
the info
were.
you giving eh, giving you the info you needed. Again, and then it clicked. I mean, you and I are both Breaking Bad fans, and we can
Uh-huh.
agree that season one of Breaking Bad was a slow burn.
I hated it. I almost stopped.
I know.
I think the fact for me that I don't know, like just some of the stuff Luthen was saying, and I didn't really like Luthen the first go around. It's not just like some of like I don't know, something about that dynamic. It was working for me, and the action was very cool. I
Yeah.
kind of want to talk about some things that should we start with stuff that I might maybe didn't love as much again, and then go into things that I like, so we can end on a sweet note.
Before we get there,
Yes.
just give a basic recap of what happened in the
Oh
first
yeah,
arc.
that'd be helpful, especially if you haven't
We're,
rewatched it with us.
yes, we. I'm not going to break this down episode by episode, scene by scene.
It is three
Before
episodes.
Yes, before it's three episodes out of 12. Joey and I were not quite sure what to call this arc, but it's basically who is Cassian. We get information about him. We know he has a sister. We know he's from a planet called Canary, and we know that he has a past with. He's on the Imperial radar. He's on this mercenary private security company's radar, and he's a smuggler. And these first three episodes really give us the info about what he does. How does he make his money? How does he have his connections on the planet Ferrix?
Mm.
Is that an adequate description, would you say? Did I leave anything out?
I would say maybe we see Cassie in an effort to avoid this like corporate security, coming to get him for a crime he committed. We see him kind of make a tentative alliance that we as the audience now know in hindsight that kind of gets him started on his pathway into the rebellion.
Right.
But we don't really technically know that fully yet, but in terms of the story, but yeah, I think you did a nice job summarizing for us.
Yeah, it was a slow burn,
So
but it was
let's
a lot of little details that you needed for
and
episode three.
for episode 3 and for the rest of the show, I
Yeah,
I do I there were some things that I understood a little more this time, and I think that helped. That doesn't mean I necessarily liked all of them, and that well, we
that's
can get
fair.
into that. But I want to ask you: is there anything that didn't necessarily work for you, or anything that didn't like Like maybe you liked a little less, or things that you didn't love the first time that kind of stuck with you.
I think I under Cyril.
Zero, you liked him less.
Yeah, I
I
liked him.
remembered
I
liking
liked
him
him
more too.
less. First watch, I almost viewed him as this like altruistic hero
Like
who
he is
just wanted to.
trying to do the right thing.
He is, and then it goes to the conversation with the supervisor, and when he broke it down, he's like, they were on the job doing something they weren't supposed to do, tried to shake somebody down on the clock.
At a place they
These
couldn't afford to be in.
Right, they weren't good people, and they pretty much messed with the wrong person and got what was coming to them. I think was the gist of what he said.
Yeah, and that didn't resonate with me as much the first time. Maybe it's because I
Me
didn't know
neither.
what was coming, but seeing that and realizing, like, wait a minute, he just blatantly defied this guy's orders and ended up with getting a ton of his people killed.
Right, and at the end of the day, he blatantly defied orders that really had no like just this butterfly effect
And like
that
he didn't
happened.
have to do like he wouldn't it wouldn't have been any skin off his back to not investigate it shy of that
Yeah,
conviction, maybe.
he
I would
remind
say I liked Cyril more the first time as well. But would he
he
remind you of?
reminds me of Dwight Schrute.
A little bit, yeah.
Well, because did you also catch the crack about when in that same meeting the supervisor goes, "Did you alter your uniform?"
Yes. Yes. I like to think that Edie did it for him. But
Yeah.
and maybe like part of liking Cyril Moore will come when he inevitably loses his job and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, maybe the sympathy will kind of come back. But yeah, no, I agree with you there. Anything else that you didn't quite vibe with?
Tim.
Okay, cool. Just Cyril. For me, I think there are a few. I'll keep it brief because at the end of the day, like I said, if we're kind of tracking my overall progress, episode one and two, my opinions really didn't change on the series, but episode three did kind of pick it up, and I suspect I'm going to be gradually lifted up as we go, based on just my memory of how the show goes. But for me, the things that didn't necessarily work for me were like just the fact that the show is somber and really sad, and like we know the way some of these characters played out, and it's just very kind of depressing. And like we talked about in our intro to this series of Andor rewatch, Andor season one rewatch, it's kind of the point. Like they, if hope can come from even the worst conditions, like something like Cassian's story, it can come from anywhere. And
Right.
but it is still sad. Like I don't like seeing Marva and B2 all sad. I don't like seeing Cassian feel such despair and all that. And that's where again, if you've listened to the previous episode, my hesitant my hesitancy with enjoying the show, it's just it doesn't quite click with what I want from a story like this. But that doesn't mean it's bad.
Right.
Does that kind of make sense? Like even that like that persisted, and I think that's what kind of looms over me.
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars has a generally happy theme. Generally, things usually end up right.
Yeah, if it gets
This,
dark, it usually gets a little.
but this is maybe one of the few exceptions where we know that this story does not have a happy ending. And I think that might be influencing how we're viewing it.
And,
Watching this character, knowing what comes of him.
and I think that is kind of the lesson or the burden of Cassian is like he ultimately ends up doing something that saves the galaxy, but he lives a very, very hard and challenging life.
Yeah.
Um, that was just the overall sense of dread was something that just kind of sat with me. And then the only other thing that I really was like, oh my God, is Tim. Oh
Hated
my
Tim.
God. I hated him before, but oh my God, I hated him even more. And this kind of brings me a little bit to one of my struggles with the first two episodes in particular. Things kind of happen and they happen very quickly, and it's very much like it just seems like spur of the moment. And a lot of the plot of the first arc in the show, what we just watched, what we're talking about here, is very much just kind of like a snowball of events. And it's cool. And you don't always see that in a show, but it did make me feel kind of like, what's happening? Uh, that guy wanted to like the police officer wanted to work with Cassie and to like pretend that the guy died on accident, but then he shot him, and then that kind of snowballs, and like Tim being drunk leads to this whole chaos in episode 3. Like I don't know, like
I think that's the point, though. I think it's trying to illustrate that actions have consequences and that emotional decisions, which we've seen, we saw three big emotional decisions in the first three episodes. Cassian executing the other guard, Cyril's raid, and Tim's report. Tim's report was out of jealousy. Cassian's execution was out of fear, and Cyril's raid was out of pride.
yeah.
And those three actions really, in the heat of the moment, just like you said, trigger the snowball effect. And if the characters would have stopped to think for a second more,
Hmm.
all of this would have been avoided.
And at the end of the day, we kind of we hop around, but this does carry through the rest of the season. All of these small decisions, the effects of these small decisions.
Right.
I think that's kind of maybe I don't really have much more negative, which I think at the end of the day might surprise you. Does it?
A little bit. I feel like you also have the added benefit of watching them all at the same time and watching them with a different purpose. Part of me thinks when you watched Andor the first time, you went into it as a negative Nelly and said, I'm not going to like this. And just watch the show through the lens of, I'm not going to like this. I'm not supposed to like this. I don't like this.
I my gut felt the same way for those first 2 episodes. That's why I was really I was getting really worried. I was like, this is going to be an awful podcast because I'm just going to be like, my opinions don't change. But the jump happened, and I'm very relieved for that. But yes, I think I had a negative, maybe a more negative mindset than I typically do. But I think we're headed in the right direction, in my opinion, in terms of me hopefully building a little bit more of a not just an appreciation. I have an appreciation, but more of a like an
Mhm.
actual like for it. Let's transition into things that you enjoyed. We can do you, and then we'll talk about what I enjoyed. Like maybe things that you either enjoyed or enjoyed even more upon rewatch.
Mm. Well, I liked episodes one and two.
That's
I like, sorry. Um,
okay.
I enjoyed the backstory because the show opens with him going to a brothel trying to figure out a sister.
Mhm.
And then I really enjoyed how we got to see, okay, here he was in this Lord of the Flies situation with a sister, and then how he escapes, or escapes, is abducted, whatever you want to call it. We got a lot of closure in the first two episodes.
There was
Like,
an element of satisfaction to it, especially like when he gets on the plane. And I think something really like hammering that closure home is like the way that they edited the last few scenes to kind of like mirror each other, like him leaving Canary and him leaving Ferrex.
mhm.
Like as like key moments in his life, like the parallels and like the satisfaction of that, I thought was very, very nice.
What's one thing you enjoyed?
I
Because I feel like we can bounce
we
some
can
things on
we
it.
can bounce. For me, the biggest thing that I really appreciate about the show, and it's something that I liked the first time, but again, paying a little more attention, having a little more focus on it, is just the set design, the aliens that are there. There aren't many, but when
Hmm.
they're there, they're good. The world around it, it felt so like lived in and like true to Star Wars. Not just Ferrex. Ferrex is the best, one of the best examples of this that I've seen. But even that first planet with the brothel with like the bubbles, it just the
Hmm.
atmosphere and the setting, it's so good.
Yeah,
Like you really feel like you're in Ferrex.
you do. And I feel like you also feel like you're you understand the community more.
Hmm.
For example, when they were all banging on the pipes or the metal,
And like that
just
was a
shows
signal
how,
for everything to shut down.
yeah, everybody knew it. And then she was like, ah, you shouldn't be scared of when there's noise. You should be scared of the silence.
Uh-huh.
Knowing what we know, how this will eventually culminate in the last episode.
It was pretty powerful. And
the
go ahead.
the mix of the people and the environment, they really play well together. Nobody feels out of place.
No, and like just like you don't always see such a fully fleshed out community in a Star Wars. You're often transiently going from places, not necessarily a character who's dwelling, or from or spend an extensive amount of time where you are in the story. And I think
Hmm.
that's a big strength.
I agree.
It just I don't know, like I could sit here and talk about all the little details. And we did an episode where we broke down I recently took a trip to get not so recently anymore, I guess, but took a trip to Galaxy's
Oof.
Edge, and there are elements of exploring Galaxy's Edge that I found so enjoyable that we're also here in Ferrix. Like, what's around that next corner? What is that shop? What is, if you open that cracked door, what gets it? Like, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like the sense of wonder is there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'd say wonder for Farrak's sense of dread and despair,
Maybe so.
sadness.
Maybe so. But yeah, I really I liked it before. I thought it was really good, but really taking the time to like soak it in, I appreciated it even more. That was probably my favorite part of rewatching this arc. What else you
I
got?
also, speaking of settings, I appreciated the fact that they don't necessarily have, for example, Luthen landing and having to take a trolley or a train to get there.
Hmm.
Or what was it? Just a
Tram or something.
ferry.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yes, we are finally in a remote area where there's not going to be a landing pad in the middle of town.
Yeah, it felt very and some
Like,
people might view this as negative, but like realistic. Like the a little
yeah,
bit of realism in an unrealistic setting is really refreshing kind of.
it almost felt like we were not with the main characters.
And I think
We
that's
were
the whole
with the
point.
NPC. Yeah, we were with the NPCs of the Star Wars universe.
And that's Cassian.
Hmm.
That is the point. And would you mind if I kind of pivot on that
Go right ahead.
to I know it's kind of we're bounce, but one of the things that I always liked the character of Cassian. I'm just not the biggest fan of the stories that he's in, which again makes me a vast minority of people for that with that opinion. But
Yeah, he's only in two.
I really like Cassian. I think Diego Luna is great. I think the character is conflicted, but he's so likable. And like at the end of the day, he's trying his best. He's struggling, but he's trying his
Right.
best.
I mean,
I really like the character.
When we meet Cassian, he's not somebody we should necessarily like.
No.
Not at all. I mean, we watch him execute somebody in cold blood in the
Hmm.
first 10 minutes of the show. But yeah, I really like it, Cassian. I like Diego Luna. Fun fact, my first exposure to Diego Luna was in Narcos, Mexico.
I hadn't seen him in anything other than Star Wars, so it's nice
Oh
that
yeah,
you have other experience.
he's in Narcos.
Isn't Pedro Pascal in that too?
He's in regular Narcos.
Hmm.
Diego Luna's in Narcos, Mexico.
Um, there's something else I wanted to say about Cassian, but I'm forgetting it. Terrible. Sorry about that. What else you
Yeah.
got? Anything else you loved about like again, liked a little more, appreciated a little more this time?
I also appreciated how we didn't have the main characters didn't have the connections that they do in other ones. It's always here, let me contact this super specific person that I know to help us. And Cassian has to go through four people. We normally don't get to see the middleman.
I feel like you're calling out Obi-Wan Kenobi knowing exactly where to take his Kaminoan saber dart to find an answer.
I honestly, that didn't even pop into my head.
I mean, you are correct. It's they always know we have to go see Maz Kanata. We have
Yeah,
to we have to go find Yoda. Like there's always someone who knows the answer. It is
yeah.
nice, and I think particularly with that, like Luthen, like Cassian has to go through great lengths to get to Luthen just to achieve his goal.
And Luthen doesn't, and then when he finally meets him, he doesn't trust him.
Uh-huh. And
I
and
mean, he
I
shouldn't.
forgot. I forgot that like the box didn't matter. I knew he wanted Cassian, but I forgot that he just did not care about the box. They didn't even take it.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy.
And that just shows, I mean, even looking back on it now, knowing how the full season goes, the value of the box to Cassian and the lengths he went to. it just shows that Luthen always focused on the biggest picture
Hmm.
at the time. And like that would have been life-changing money for Cassian. And Luthen's like, leave it.
And I think like that whole Luthen monologue, like he comes off here as very like kind of slick, relatable rebel leader, right? Would you say
Mhm.
like he comes off a little more traditional here than you find that he is later. But there's enough little comments he makes that kind of hint at the fact that I didn't pick up on the first time that he might be a little more crazy, a little more Saw Gerrera than Mon Mothma than
Yeah.
you initially think.
Yeah, he's unhinged.
He is unhinged. I did not remember him carrying that weird, cool walking stick sword thing.
Yeah, me neither.
I didn't. I like. I don't know when he like sheathed it. I was like, what is happening here?
He's an eccentric billionaire. I don't know if he's a billionaire, but he's definitely
He's
eccentric.
pretty rich and eccentric for sure.
Yeah.
Anything else that kind of stuck out to you as like super enjoyable?
Just the interpersonal relationships. It felt realistic.
It does feel real.
And that is an unfortunate element because, we're talking how this depressing world. It's like, oh, and this is the one that feels real. Like,
Yeah.
but that's
Um,
okay.
I really enjoyed the action. I mean, and action's not everything, but it's certainly cool to have a nice blaster fire. But that in particular, I'm referring to the in the when Cassian and Luthen were in that like workshop thing and
Hmm.
chains were flying everywhere. It was very cool.
It was, and nothing felt wasted.
No, it felt like they weren't in control, which I think is another thing where when we're with the main characters and doing air quotes, you can't see it because it's a podcast, but the main characters are always in control, more or less. Like Luke
Yeah.
Skywalker generally is like he's pretty confident in what he's doing. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, they're confident in what they're doing. Those two, I felt like there was a chance they weren't walking out of there,
Yeah.
which I thought was
And
nice.
it just showed also Luthen has some experience with this because he immediately knew, they're waiting for more people.
Hmm. I think. Yeah, are you ready to kind of to move into the conclusions for our thoughts on the
Yeah.
arc? All right. I was pleasantly surprised. Like I said, I really didn't think it was going to change. I thought I was going to feel the same emotions. I was like, but I just really was happy with like I got that. When you're watching something, you get that like little click in your chest where you're like, oh, I'm into this now.
Yeah, and you have the urge to watch the next.
Yes, and I think one of the things that I struggled with the first time was just how different all the arcs were. But I think knowing that going in is going to help me in the future.
Right, and viewing it as four mini seasons within a season.
Exactly. And I think this is really gearing us up for the way they're releasing Ender Season 2.
Yeah.
I also, if you have listened to us all, I'm a big fan of Force Center podcast, and they always make fun of the fact that Luthen calls him Cassian Andor. I caught it. It's very funny. Did you catch it?
Hmm.
I'm sure it'll happen again, but he goes Cassian Andor. It's thoroughly entertaining. I just again I know we don't usually score or quantify, and I don't want to do that, but I want to say like my feeling if this is a show about rewatching and what do we think as we're experiencing again, especially someone who was a little more on the not quite for me side of it. The first two episodes didn't do anything to change my mind, but maybe they did in hindsight as I really felt the effects of the payoff in episode 3. So that's kind of where I want to leave it for this is like for me, I ended higher than I started, which I think is kind of our whole goal here is to
Right.
like, and I was worried. Like I said, I didn't know that was going to happen, but we hadn't
Right.
even seen Mothma and I'm already liking it more. We're in good shape.
And I think the thing to remember is that at least when you and I talk about rewatches and what we want to rewatch, our goal isn't to make the other like the show. The goal is for us to make each other understand why we appreciate it.
Mhm.
And I think that's what it sounds like that you're on that path.
That's I kind of wanted to ask you two questions. The second one we'll let you do because it'll be kind of your wrap up. But are you pleased with my perception and mindset with this thus far, as
Yes,
someone who is the fan?
I gave you a hard time last week.
You did. It's okay.
I did.
It's fair.
But I think, again, I mentioned earlier, I think you're going into this with more of an open mind
I am, and
than you did the first time.
I might not have mentioned this in our initial episode, but my first when this first came out, let's see, it came out on September 21, 2022.
Yeah,
I got
busy time for you.
married. I got married that week, and it was 3 episodes all at once. I'm looking at Wikipedia right now, but that has that date. So I was really frantic. It was just like a bad time in my life for something to kind of distract me. So I didn't end up actually watching it.
Understandable.
Like I actually let me think. Thank you for that, by the way. I
Oh,
don't think I actually watched it. I think I was delayed. Like I think it had already all ended by the time I
I think
fully
you like
finished it.
started in like January.
It was no, it was the fall. It was
Was
it
it
was.
fall?
Maybe it was January. I don't know. You could.
Maybe it may, if it was fall, it was late fall.
It was done. The show was done, which was November 23rd. So I think you might be right. But yes, I made sure to watch it. But again, even still, I was going into it like, having the buzz of like checking Twitter and seeing what people are saying and the memes and all that. Like
Yeah.
I definitely missed out on some of the enjoyment that came with experiencing a Star Wars show live in action. So again,
Yeah.
having the time to soak into it and enjoy it, I think is good. Anyway,
I
I
agree.
kind of want to leave with your impression. If did it change? What do you? Where are we? Where are we?
No, it's about the same for me. I really liked it the first time. I really liked it now. Um, and I do think the arcs get better as the season progresses.
I'm
So,
interested to see because again, I was very much. It's kind of like when you like if you like have a glass of water and a glass of orange juice next to each other, and you expect the orange juice and you drink the water, and it's like, oh, I'm interested to see if that's the experience that I had watching the show the first time, and maybe it'll change a little as I go through since I know what I'm drinking metaphorically.
yeah.
But yeah, anything else to add for Arc One rewatch?
No, but I think that brings us to arc two, which is the Aldani arc.
That's a big one.
It is a big one.
I,
It's a good
I'm
one.
looking forward to it. I will share my thoughts from the previous time in the next episode. But I am excited to go into it, which again I think is a testament to the rewatch being a good idea.
Yes.
All right. Anything else to add, Dan?
No, sir.
Keep an eye next week. We're releasing this on this is the April 22nd. It'll be by the time it comes out, I believe. So every week leading up to Andor, we're going to do another arc. So keep an eye out for Andor season one rewatch for the next few weeks leading up to season two. But with that, we thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed. Please consider giving us a like, a subscription, a review on YouTube or the podcast platform of your choice. Consider giving us a follow on Twitter or X at Blue Shadow Pod or on Instagram at Blue Shadow Podcast. With that, we thank you again. We hope you enjoyed, and we will see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you.